What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 9. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for coming back and listening to another episode where we're talking about a movie that we recently seen, came out in theaters, and then I try to decide, is it a timeless movie? Can I rewatch this movie over and over again after just one viewing? Obviously, a ridiculous thing to try to do after just seeing one movie, in theaters and having it fresh in my mind. But I thought, you know what? I'd be up for the challenge. And that movie for this week's episode is going to be Venom, Let There Be Carnage, the sequel to the 2018 film Venom. Let's go ahead and kind of just jump off to the specific reasons why I wanted to watch the movie. Like I mentioned, the original or the first movie of Venom in this specific, two-part series came out in 2018, starring Tom Hardy. I went to go watch the first Venom in theaters. Thought it was okay, nothing too crazy. I really enjoyed way more better Marvel films in that year specifically. Infinity War came out that year. I believe even, I think it was Into the Spider-Verse came out that year. Black Panther came out that year. All those films were way better than this Venom one. But I thought it was okay, It's just a cool take on Venom. I didn't think it was going to be, I always grew up with the animated series, the Spider-Man animated series show, and seeing Venom be a villain. So it was very weird to kind of see him kind of be that anti-hero that we saw him in that 2018 film. Anyway, nothing really stood out for me on that specific film. So I really thought, I don't really think there should really be a sequel. They did have an after credit scene highlighting and showing Woody Harrelson as Cletus Kasady, who would eventually go on to be Carnage. Even after seeing that, I didn't really think there would ever be a sequel, but the film ended up doing really good in 2018. It got about $800 million around there worldwide, and so a sequel was greenlit, and this time they were going to have to include the character of Carnage. After checking out some of the trailers for Venom 2, it got me a little bit more hyped, as now we would be getting two classic Spider-Man villains in Venom and Carnage facing off. I also was really intrigued by the idea of Woody Harrelson playing Cletus Kasady, how he would try to portray the serial killer in the movie, what kind of a behavior or mannerisms would he have. And of course, the final reason that really got me interested in the movie was it's Marvel. And with the MCU going through a multiverse phase, you never know what could happen with these Marvel properties that aren't in the MCU. I mean, if anybody hasn't seen the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home, we see glimpses of Doc Ock. We have heard rumors about, Jamie Foxx reprising his role as Electro. So really, all cards are on the table right now. You have no idea if these characters from other properties that aren't, attached to MCU or Disney can appear in these Marvel movies now. And so I'm excited for that. So you never have that feeling of like, these are now two different universes. Now you can throw that out the window now, because after all this multiverse stuff that they're talking about, it just gets me a little bit more intrigued of what Marvel and other properties can do with their characters. All right, well, I want to jump into a quick summary of the film just to kind of give everybody a gist of what it's about. The movie, once again, it takes place in San Francisco, just as the first one did, where Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy, continues to try to build his legacy as an investigative reporter. He actually unexpectedly gets asked to go to San Quentin prison in order to talk with the antagonist of the film, Cletus Kasady, who is played by Woody Harrelson. Cletus is in prison for the murder of several people, and really is beginning to consider, is being considered for the, sentencing of the death penalty. California, in real life, kind of remove that policy of using this death sentence. But in the film, they're actually trying to make it be reversed just for this Cletus Kasady character because of all the killings that he has done. However, in order to kind of reverse that decision, the police actually need more proof in regards to where these bodies that Cletus has really taken from, where has he buried them? Where has he placed them? Because at the moment, he's killed a few people, but nobody knows where those bodies are. So Eddie ends up meeting Cletus at San Quentin prison. His other side of Venom actually has a photographic memory because he's actually able to remember these weird drawings and writings that he sees in Cletus' cell walls when he goes to the prison. What we end up finding out is that those drawings were actually clues regarding where exactly Kasady buried the bodies. Once Venom guides Eddie to the truth, the police uncover the bodies where really tips the scale in favor for the death penalty for Kasady. However, before Kasady leaves this earth via the death penalty, he actually wanted to meet Eddie, person to person. He wanted to meet the person responsible for sentencing him to death in order to provide his life story and hope to have it printed for the world to understand who Cletus Kasady really was as a man. Eventually, during this discussion, there's a bit of an altercation. You actually see Venom take over a little bit and try to harm Cletus, and this gives Cletus an opportunity to actually bite the hand of Eddie, and he ends up drinking a little bit of his blood, as disgusting how that sounds. But at that moment, when he drank the blood, is when we see the birth of Carnage. Eddie's blood mixed with the symbiote of Venom manifested into something new that runs through the veins of Cletus. This new symbiote actually prevents the euthanization process from being completed. That's actually how they were going to kill Kasady. And Kasady transforms into Carnage. He then proceeds to wreak havoc in San Francisco in search for his lost love. The character ended up being Shriek, a woman that has this power to really shriek and scream and really just cause a bunch of chaos. Cletus also wanted to have vengeance against the man who was going to put him to death, and that is Eddie Brock. So he was going to stop at no cost in order to find Eddie and kill him as well. In the film, Eddie not only had to battle Carnage, but he also had Venom that he had to face off as well. Eddie and the Venom symbiote disagree in various aspects, which eventually leaves them to be separated in one part of the film. This is where I feel the theme of the movie really resides. How do you really balance out the good and the bad in order to live in harmony? All Eddie wants to do is really get back to his life before Venom. He was set to be married with his then ex-fiancée Annie. He had a good job. He had really no struggles at all. And now, while Venom, all he really wants is really to stop bad people and eat their heads for their brains. So there's always a constant struggle of balance and that's really what separates the two of them. But once they understand that they actually need each other, Venom can't really live another host's body unless it's Eddie, because they're really a perfect match. And Eddie obviously realizes that those conversations that he has with Venom actually help him out in his career to again, help both of them realize their full potential. Which is actually, they actually call it out in the film, their full potential is really to be a lethal protector. So they still want to protect good people from these bad guys that are thugs or mugging them or doing stuff around the city. But they're going to do it in a lethal way, which is Venom's way of eating people's heads off and obviously festing on their brains. I actually enjoyed this film better than the first one. My expectations weren't that high to begin with. I was really just there to check out the battle between Carnage and Venom and see how they would do it visually in the film. And it did not disappoint me at all. Also, if you go see this film, please stay after for the after credit scene in this film. It will be definitely worth it. I highly recommend everybody, even if you're not a fan of the first Venom and you really just want to see a new movie, go check it out and stay for that after credit scene, because it's gonna blow your mind. I'm probably hyping it up too much, but my goodness, what a great scene that was. All right, those are my general thoughts and summary of the movie. Again, I don't want to spoil it for you guys because it did just recently come out on October 1st. So I want you guys to go experience it if you're interested in that. And if you're not interested, well, definitely just put it out in the comments here why you don't really want to go watch it as well. Now I want to move on into the performance of an actor, actress that really, impressed me or I really enjoyed throughout the film. I'll be honest, I was really hoping that Woody Harrelson would steal the show during this film. He's so awesome in every other movie that he comes out in. Even in shows like True Detective or movies like Zombieland. He's always just a really good guy to kind of keep an eye on because he's just going to have some really funny lines as well. But I think I still have to give the performance to Tom Hardy. Not saying Woody Harrelson didn't do good. I thought he portrayed the creepy serial killer really well. There just wasn't anything that stood out to me that was memorable. Tom Hardy, on the other hand, again, he has so many scenes where obviously the film revolves around his character, but it's really those scenes where he's talking to Venom, to people outside of his head, which is everybody else. Nobody can hear this conversation that he's having with Venom. They just hear Tom Hardy or Eddie Brock really talking to himself. And so people just look at him weird. They think he's crazy. And at one point, in the film, he's having an argument with Venom, and Eddie just says, "You suck!" But there was a prison guard that was standing right in front of him that said, "Excuse me?" And Eddie later apologized, saying that it wasn't meant to be towards her. But it's just good stuff from Tom Hardy, playing that weird guy who's constantly hearing a voice in his head. He has such great facial expressions, and again, it's he makes it so realistic that he can actually hear everything that Venom's saying. What I ended up finding out from the behind the scenes is that he actually pre-records all of those lines and dialogue as Venom. They obviously distort the voice, and then he actually has an earbud where he can hear back what he's saying. So again, just helps with that illusion of movie making, but it adds to his performance as well. So good job to Tom Hardy and to Woody Harrelson again, and the whole cast as well. All right, I want to jump into my favorite scene of the movie, but in order to do so, I do need to give a bit of spoiler warnings because this is going to give a little bit away about the film. So if you have not seen the movie Venom, Let There Be Carnage, please leave now or skip it probably another 5-10 minutes, probably a little bit more 5, but that way you don't get spoiled by anything that I'm going to discuss on my favorite scene. Okay, I think that was a long enough pause. So the scene actually happens midway through the film, where I actually discussed about it before, where Carnage ends up stopping the euthanization process of Cletus in order to not get killed by the death penalty. As he was going through that process, he was going to get euthanized. The poison was going to run through his veins, and the Carnage symbiote actually stops that process. It stops the poison from getting into his body, and then all hell breaks loose in the prison. The cell that contained Cletus was all destroyed, and the prison workers who were performing the euthanization fell to the floor as soon as the symbiote erupted from Cletus's body. Then you see from the point of view of a prison guard as they look up at the destroyed cell. Nothing but black smoke and sparks of light emitting from wires is what can be seen. And then the camera stays on the smoke for a few seconds, and then all of a sudden we see Carnage explode onto the screen, screaming as loud as he can right into the camera. It was freaking awesome. It was a nice jump scare, and I don't know if it was intended for a jump scare, but it reminded me of like a horror movie. It got horror vibes off of that specific scene. And again, as soon as Carnage popped up, you can just hear his crazy scream, which is completely different than Venom's scream that he has come out in the first and in this movie as well. And he just starts terrorizing the prison guards, and he shows off some of his skills. The design that they made of his Carnage symbiote suit was awesome as well. Obviously, a lot of CGI was needed, but I thought the design of Carnage was awesome. It just exemplified how horrific this character really is. And it also shows with the violence that he did. He was able to almost, throw out different types of spikes from his body to kill a bunch of prison guards. He allowed a bunch of, prison guards to escape, all this different stuff. And oh man, it was a great scene overall and a great introduction to a scary character like Carnage. All right, now I want to move on to the next segment, which I like to offer as, would I recommend this movie for you to watch? This was a bit tough. If you didn't like the first movie, then I don't think this would really change your mind about Venom. It's not like it's going to completely, take you into the experience of like, you know what? That first Venom, it was a classic. I don't think it does that. It didn't really blow me away. It was still a fun movie to watch, though. Again, 2 characters that I grew up watching on the Spider-Man animated series. So that immediately got me intrigued. But since again, I want to answer the question since I obviously brought it up on my own podcast. I would say that I wouldn't recommend it's a watch for you guys. However, if we are including the after credit scene that I mentioned earlier, which I will not spoil, then I would say that after credit scene is worth just going to the movie theaters and watching this film, because it just blows me away the connections and really where this specific character is going. Especially if you're into the superhero genre of movies. Again, you know how many after credit scenes Marvel does, and then other superhero movies start doing it. So all I can say is that if you're interested and you're intrigued and you have some or you're already into Marvel movies like I am, then definitely go ahead and check it out. But mostly for a general audience, not a definite recommend. All right, now I want to move on to the last segment of this podcast, and that is, does the movie have potential to be timeless? Me being honest, I don't believe it has the potential at the moment to be timeless. maybe some of you out there believe it does. I don't really see myself watching this film again. Now, I'll repeat it one more time. The visuals were awesome in this movie. But nothing in the film really excites me to watch it all over again. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but that after credit scene though is timeless. That like literally was less than probably a minute or about a minute of a after credit scene. But I'm probably more hyped up that after credit scene than the entire film that I watched. It was just, again, I don't think anybody was expecting what they were going to show in that after credit scene. And so again, it just shows what they're planning to do with Venom in the future. Anyway, I don't really consider this movie timeless, but that is, again, my opinion. You guys might have something else, so I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Have you had a chance to go see Venom, Let There Be Carnage? And if you have, what was your favorite part? Is there any other specific aspect that maybe I didn't point out? Did you like the music? I didn't even pay attention to the music and see if there was anything that stood out for me. Obviously, nothing really did because I would have called it out, but you let me know, guys, in the comments below. Also, if you don't want to watch the movie, you can go ahead and explain as to why you don't want to watch the movie. Again, I want to get your thoughts and have some nice discussion around this specific topic. Alright guys, thank you so much again for coming back and listening to another podcast. We'll be back with another new episode next week. I actually already have the next movie planned. Just to give you guys a teaser, it's going to be James Bond, No Time to Die, the last entry for Daniel Craig in the James Bond series. I can't wait to go watch that one next week, and I'll have episode 10 up, hopefully in a good time frame for you guys to listen in as well. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode 9 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Thanks so much, guys, and have a great rest of your week.